Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. I couldn't be more excited to have you on the show today because I'm here with the wonderful founders of Girls Driving for a Difference and my very good friends, Jenna Leonardo and Katie Church. Thank you guys for being back.
Thanks so much for having us, Jenna. We're excited to be here.
So we have to kick off before we chatted last time, you guys were heading on your road trip in just a couple of months after graduating from Stanford. Now you're back and you met with 1,200 girls across the U.S. Can you give us a little insight into that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So we took off the day after graduation, starting in California. And so the four of us were living in this RV and, living together and working together every day. And kind of at the beginning, it's this trial and error process of, going from city to city and learning what works best and learning how different each community can be, and then still seeing these threads as we meet with all these different girls. So we started off with girls in California at a summer camp, and then we were up in Oregon working with girls from a correctional school, and then, we came up to Seattle, which is where I live now, and as we crossed across the whole country, just really finding ways to connect, even in a really short amount of time, with these 1,200 girls who we found were just so much, they have so much on their minds, so much more than you would expect, even though, we kind of knew going in all the things that middle school girls are struggling with. Actually being there with them in their environments and kind of having all of them together in a room. Gosh, I can just even now remember so many of the girls' faces in those moments we got to share with them. By the time we ended up back in California 14 weeks later.
Even during the short period of time that you guys were with them during the workshops, could you see a change in them?
Yeah, go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, it's amazing. Some girls come in with what we call a cool card, and we eventually started addressing that card about halfway through our journey. We started coming up in the beginning of the workshop and saying, hey, we know that sometimes we walk in with a cool card, and Jenna would pull out a piece of paper that said cool card, and she would say, like, I'm 13, I'm 21, 22, and I don't know if I really want to engage in the activities today. I don't really know if I want to participate and really, get to know the rest of the room and lean into this. And I think our way of literally ripping up the cool card in the beginning of the workshop and showing them, hey, we're willing to be goofy with you. We're going to be ourselves today if you promise to do the same, ended up being a really good way to break the ice early on, so that throughout the rest of the workshop, they're able to just kind of step in and say how they feel and be honest with both the girls sitting with them in their teams and also with themselves. Because I think it's a workshop that has a lot of goofiness and fun to it, with the brainstorm relay race and putting Post-its all over your body that represent your skills. And we take this fun quiz where it goes around the team table, and it's about, there's one question about being a superhero and what your power might be, but along the way, there are also some really real discussions that we spark with them, and I think those conversations are made able by first setting up the workshop to be really fun and open. So I think it was important to have that mix, but we did see a lot of the cool card coming in the beginning, especially just like girls wearing their hair over their face, sometimes sunglasses. You see crossed arms, just like not laughing at jokes that we're making, not because they're not funny, because some of them are, but because they just, are not really ready yet. And being able to see a lot of girls, start off like that, but by the end of the 2 hours, like standing up on a chair and shouting their mission statement and wanting to cheer and put their arm around the girls that they've met and laugh with them
and open up to us too, who are strangers to them at that point, really seeing that middle school is this time where they might start with this barrier, but it's actually remarkably fast to get through that barrier, which I think was one of my fears going in that was totally dispelled after the first few workshops.
Absolutely.
I think, too, especially for that age, I mean, the three of us have been there and everyone has been there. Being a middle school girl, you do have the cool card, and half of it is because you don't even think you're cool. You're just so nervous about, oh my God, what does this person think of me? So the fact that you're able to get them not only to open up to you guys, but to each other, the people that they're going to see every day, is huge.
Yeah, I think, making fools of ourselves first really helped with that.
Absolutely. I think the sillier you are with the girls, and the more that you're willing to show them that you are completely yourself, and sometimes that means making bad jokes or coloring on, crazy pictures on Post-its and giving it to them. I think it leads to the forming of some really great friendships, and ones that, there were a lot of girls that stuck out from the trip that we'll never forget.
For each of you, who are one of those girls?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I always think of this girl, Zoe, who I met in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And yeah, this isn't necessarily like the happiest story, but she was someone who, I loved this workshop. I had such an amazing time with these girls. My team was called the Aquapan Unicorn Dragons. And we were just having, we got really deep with our mission statements. We threw a dance party, and there was this one girl who I just totally bonded with. Both loved dragons, and I have this dragon stuffed animal that I showed her. I don't know. We were just having a great time, and it felt especially meaningful when after the workshop, she really opened up to me about her life at home and things that she's going through. And I remember at first feeling, really good that I was able to be there with her and talk her through it. And then, kind of as time passes and we're waiting for someone to come pick her up, I'm realizing, actually, I don't feel so good about myself, because now I feel bad that we're leaving tomorrow, and I don't know how much I can stay in touch with this girl. And she's really someone who I really felt on both sides of that spectrum. I felt the side of, wow, we really connected, and I hope I moved the needle in her life in some way. And she's someone I think of when I think of people who can benefit from this workshop. But it also is something that really motivated us to think along the lines of how we can make this workshop more sustainable and more actually ingrained in these girls' communities, and not just kind of a traveling circus the way that it has been.
How about for you, Katie?
Oh my gosh. I think one story that definitely comes to mind, I think for our full team too, is it was actually the first workshop we coached. It was a prototype workshop in Palo Alto, and there was a girl, Maya, who came. And at this point, we had split up the workshop. This was a very early version. It was actually mostly a design thinking challenge. At the very end, we had kind of tacked on this leadership component where we started asking them questions about the skills that they had and the kind of leader they wanted to be and felt that they were, and how to bring kind of those areas together in a mission statement. And that was the part that we felt the least sure about, but really wanted to prototype and just see how it would go. So we had created this version of the workshop and brought it to a school as kind of an after-school special. The girls had just finished their classes for the day, and we showed up to coach this workshop. And there was one girl named Maya who's in 7th grade, and she came. And the design thinking challenge went great. She rocked it. She was super into all the ideation, the brainstorming, the prototyping, all the steps she had really engaged in. And we were so excited to then, bring in this last leadership component, and felt pretty good about it. But you're never sure how something's going to go, right, until you meet the girls and you try it out. And we got to a point where there's a workshop page that asks you to list out a couple skills that you have. And we had seen throughout the workshop that Maya was incredibly talented. As we mentioned, all of the different design thinking activities had just gone through with confidence and skill, and we could tell that she was so smart. And I had no doubt, watching her go through this activity. But we're watching Maya stare down at this blank page in the notebook and are facing each other, going, "How? What?" We just had this moment of okay, this is not something that is it a discomfort with the language we've used on the page? Is it something that happened in the workshop that we missed? That's not, we were trying to think of why Maya is sitting there facing this empty page when we've only known her for an hour and a half, and we can already see all these amazing skills that she has. We're dying to reach out and be but Maya, all these things. And I think we finally got to a point where we said, Maya, maybe, there's a friend here in the room who you have a class with who might be able to help you, come up with some of the strengths that you have, because we feel like you're pretty talented. And her friends see that her page is blank, and they start jumping in with all these ideas. But Maya, you rocked the science fair, and remember that one assignment you did for our English class and how great it was. And they start jumping in with all these concrete examples, and Maya starts nodding her head and writing things down. And to see that experience happen, I think for us was a big click. Number one, in that, it's tough to stand up and say that you're good at something. Even for for women today,
Yeah.
our age, like it's hard to stand up and say, I'm good at this. And it's just not a conversation we're used to having, both with ourselves and with other people. And we realized it was a conversation that was really important to start having with the girls. And Maya was really the example that helped us make that shift. So I think, that story will always stand with our team, both for the fact that it shaped our workshop entirely. We ended up scrapping the design thinking challenge completely and taking this one leadership component and making it the whole workshop. And we also really changed the way that, we don't just ask girls now, what are you good at? It's like we have special cards that like enable us to, spark these conversations in a much more comfortable and hopefully creative way. But, that was our first take on it. And we just learned so much from seeing girls work through kind of the curriculum you've created and see how you can make it 10 times better.
I loved that one story about Maya in terms of what are you good at, because it really extends throughout your life. For an early stage founder, when you have that crazy idea and people every day are like, that's a horrible idea, that's never going to work. You have to be your own biggest advocate and be able to self-reflect and be like, no, I'm really good at this. I know this. I can do it. And to build that in kids between, 10 to 13 could totally change them in preparation to handle those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having Maya look up at us and say, like, I'm just not good at anything was something that, you could see that being something that extends into somebody's life. And you can see a little bit of yourself in that fear too. And I think actually coming out and addressing that and starting to learn the tools to actually recognize the things you're good at is something that I think was really valuable for us too. I know for me, this project has really helped me recognize my own skills and become more comfortable owning my strengths, which is something that I didn't even realize I had so ingrained in me. And like there was still a lot of middle school girl in me that was afraid to own up to being good at anything.
Yeah, and on the other end of that too is, especially for them, it doesn't matter. Like you don't have to be good at everything. Like
Right.
choose your things and rock those. You can always have a team or friends who can help you with the other aspects.
Absolutely, that's so true.
Part of that you guys did that I love is, I think I was watching this in one of the videos, when you guys would ask them, what are some of those core moments of leadership or what type of leader are you? You always interjected with, this is the type of leader that I am and this is what I do to, set the precedent. How important was language when you were with them?
Yeah, we ended up realizing that the language was super important. We came up with 4 different leadership styles that the girls could identify with through the quiz. And then the 4 of us then also identified as each of those leadership styles and broke off into huddle groups to talk with the girls about what it meant in our own experience to be that leadership style, and ask them questions too about their own experience with leading in that way. And I think even just framing it as it's a leadership style quiz, so everyone ends up with a leadership style, which seems really simple, but underneath that, there's already the assumption that you are a leader. And I think that's something that not every girl comes into the workshop thinking. They understand that they have a different personality than other girls in X, Y, and Z ways, but they might not see themselves already as having stereotypical leadership traits. And I think being able to help them associate their personality with not just as them, oh, like that's just how I am. No, those are actually traits that make you your own unique type of a leader. And it can be really powerful and impactful. I think, even framing it that way, for example, was really helpful for the girls.
Yeah, and I think it's with the hard skills, it was difficult for them to say, like, I am good at math. With leadership, it actually wasn't as hard to get them to say, I'm compassionate or I'm organized, but it was a step further to get them to actually say, compassion actually can help me be a leader. Yeah. Being organized is actually something that makes me a leader. Mm-hmm. And especially, like I would sit in the circle with girls that was about, compassion and empathy, teamwork and listening, and hearing these girls tell stories. Yeah, I'm a pink radio.
We came prepared for this interview.
Those are the leadership strengths associated with it. And I would hear them go around in a circle and share these stories about times that they showed compassion or times that they were a good listener. And then getting them to actually then say, like, and that makes me a leader was really interesting. And it did take for us sharing both reflecting on ourselves and how that these traits have made us leaders and sharing those stories with them, especially as it means, we have been interacting as a team of four. We understand each other's strengths. We know what our limitations are and how those four strengths actually do work well together. And that conversation gets just kind of started at the end of that reflection period is, okay, how can you then value other people's leadership strengths and complement them?
So I'm sure you probably have 500 answers to this question, but what surprised you on the trip when you were with the girls?
Surprises.
I'm trying to think of what surprised us most.
Yeah. I was always pleasantly surprised by how willing people were to just invite us into their lives. Even though they were aware that we were only going to be there for a couple days, even though we were total strangers, people would open their homes and their families and really their hearts to us and tell us so much about these deep things that they've been thinking about their communities, their families, their daughters. Those kind of host relationships we had with the families who were letting us, sleep in their driveway. And we shared some really, really special moments with those people and with the women who are helping to organize workshops. And I remember those were moments of just really meaningful surprise of, I am, wow, so amazingly surprised by people's ability to bring us into their lives, even for just that short amount of time.
And there's even that one dad who was writing about how he was hoping that his daughter would be able to follow in your footsteps and these young girls' footsteps, and she was only 3 months old.
That was certainly a surprise. Yeah. One of the best kinds.
How about you, Katie?
One thing that was surprising, and I think that continued to surprise me and our team throughout the summer, was just how different each workshop felt. And that's something that I didn't really expect, and that I even had people, asking me before I hit the road saying oh my gosh, you're going to coach the same workshop 50 times. Are you kidding? That's a lot of the same workshop. You're really going to do that all summer for 14 weeks? And we're like, yeah, but we didn't really know how unique every workshop would feel until we actually got on the road, and it felt like a completely new workshop every time. I gotta tell you, it was we used the same activities, often the same language. I mean, by the end of the summer, it felt almost scripted because we were so used to saying, the introducing every activity. The transitions really had become, super fluid, and we felt really comfortable with material, but every workshop felt so different because of where we were and the community we were working with. And, there's a huge difference between, I think our smallest workshop was 5 girls. And there were 4 of us as facilitators with 5 girls. It was a lot of one-on-one attention, I mean, that was and then we had restructured a bunch of, and we were also in a humongous space. It was this beautiful, I mean, it was the most ironic. We were like, what? Okay. There were butterflies on the walls. There was a playground nearby. Do you remember this workshop?
Yeah. It's huge, amazing.
It was
space,
humongous.
Yeah.
It was the ceiling was, I couldn't even, I majored in product design, and I couldn't tell you how high that was. It was just the biggest space, and this one table of 5. And remember, you get to know the girls so well, and then it's on the totally opposite end of the spectrum, we had one workshop where we had, I think, we showed up and there were twice as many students there as we thought there were going to be, and we were preparing workshop materials 10 minutes before and trying to set everything up. There was another time where we actually split in half. So 2 of us went to one room on campus, the other 2 went to another room, and we coached 2 workshops at the same time, both with 30 or 40 girls. There was one time that we had a co-ed workshop. Huge difference, right? Yes. I mean, there was another time we were with a gymnastics team. Everyone showed up in their leotard expecting practice to happen, and we were like, surprise! Sorry or surprise, I don't know, but we're doing a workshop. And they had no idea, and their coach was like, have fun, I'll see you at the end of practice. So, I mean, just completely different scenarios, and also the conversations that are started, the girls that we're working with, their backgrounds, their experience levels in design thinking make a huge difference, but also just their exposure in general to problems that apply to both the world as a whole and their hometown, the number of conversations they've shared with their family or friends about these kinds of, sometimes very rough and intense topics. We touch on a lot of different types of issues in the workshops, and getting to know girls' experience levels, like talking about those issues in the first place, totally sets the tone for the rest of the workshop.
And as you reflect on all of these things, so even in the couple of minutes that we've been together, I've heard all of these different stories. What was it like for you guys getting up every day? You have no idea what you're going to encounter. You don't know how they're going to respond to the workshop. You don't know what direction it's going to go. How did you grow on the trip?
I think comfort with changing and ambiguity, comfort with constantly adapting. Like, you're adapting on that small level of, in every workshop, you're adapting a little bit to meet the energy level of the girls. You're adapting your living style so that all four of us are comfortable in this 20 by 10-foot space. And then you're adapting literally every day to, I'm in a new city, I'm surrounded by different people. I think adaptability was one huge theme that came personally out of the summer for me.
I think another one was just honest communication, like knowing that the ways that we're communicating as a team, as friends, as people who live in the same confined space all summer, as travel buddies, as, and the list goes on, making sure that we're honestly expressing how we feel through the ups and the downs, because there will inevitably be ups and downs. It's like we had this practice that we did every morning where we would check in emotionally to see how everyone was doing. And we usually use something like a number scale. And we check in and be like, hey, Jenna, how are you feeling this morning? And if Jenna tells me 90, I'm like, awesome. Like, Jenna's doing great. All's well. And if Jenna turns to me and she's like, Katie, I don't know why, but I'm feeling like 60 today. I'm like, oh my God, what can I do? Or if I tell Jenna I'm feeling 60, it happens. There were times I think we all felt, every possible number from 0 to 100, because there's just, and that happens. And I think being comfortable with the rest of the team enough to say, I'm honestly feeling this way and I don't know why. Sometimes we wake up and we just don't feel 100. But in reality, we call it, in the real world outside the RV, it's like, that's okay, right? Because we know how to re-energize. If we have a meeting or a presentation or a performance or a whatever happening later that day, we know, like, some people need a cup of coffee, some people need a nap, some people need to be alone and just think and listen to music, and that's all okay, that's all great. Because by the time, you arrive to whatever event is happening that day and where you need to be 100, you are. And you had that space and time to get there. And I think, when you're constantly with your team and your friends and your sisters and your teachers and your everything, right? It's like, if you're not at 100, number one, everyone knows already. So you might as well tell them, right? And the second piece is, I think, being able to admit it to yourself. Hey, I'm not feeling 100 today, and that's okay. And I am going to love myself through this. I'm going to accept that I'm not feeling 100 and find ways to re-energize, and know that the rest of my team is here to help me get to a more energized and prepared and just, ready to make things happen kind of a mindset. Because we don't all wake up feeling that way, and we shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the road trip taught me lessons on just honest communication and how important that can be, especially as a team, grows closer and stronger.
I think, too, what you guys were doing was such an intensely emotional experience. One of the things you shared when you guys did that presentation in New York, Jenna, was after it was actually Zoe's story, you met her, you were just so upset. You guys are all sitting and crying in the RV. This stuff, it stays with you. You can't just leave her and be like, okay, off to the next destination. What are the conversations that you guys brought back?
It was such a meta experience. We had so many conversations that we could see were so parallel with what we were talking to the girls about. We realized we're still working through exactly the same things. And we had so many of those conversations in the RV. I mean, you've got a 10-hour drive ahead of you, and Katie's sitting in the passenger seat, and we do a lot of talking. And it would be about, for three of us, we had just graduated, and so some of the conversations were about, like, what do we want from our life? What from this do we want to carry into?
I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm still having this conversation. And some of the conversations were a lot about us realizing how much we're learning about ourselves and needing to talk through it in order to understand it better, not just for our own sake, but also because our understanding of ourselves affects each other so much. Because as I learn to understand and accept my leadership style, Katie's learning how to best interact with that. And like, I'm trying to explain it as I'm understanding it. I think those conversations, I think one that came up several times in the summer that we don't often talk about is, I think at each point, I'll at least like speak for myself, we felt some kind of insecurity around our own leadership style of like, maybe this isn't the best way to be. Like, maybe I should be more like this style. Maybe this style is annoying. I certainly felt some insecurity about that. And then learning as we talked with each other and we learned how much we valued each other's leadership styles once we were able to understand them better, where we felt frustration, and then by the end, really coming to a fuller appreciation for who we were and what we brought to the team, and then just such gratitude for what each of the other three members brought into our world.
God, that's so true. You needed the kit. I would have been like breaking out the kit on the road.
Oh yeah. We broke out the kit. we broke out the leadership quiz at parties.
That was fun. I liked that. We went to it was a birthday party in Chicago, and we were eating Mexican food. It was a highly festive event, and we decided to bring out the leadership quiz for fun, and that's the point that we reached.
We're like so obsessed with thinking about this.
We were like, I wonder if she's a yellow, a green, a pink, or a blue, because I think she's half. Like, we would have these conversations.
Yeah.
I think you're living it, you're breathing it, and before we dive into what's next for GDD, I have to know, what was the craziest memory from the RV for each of you?
Oh man, the one that comes to mind for me is this day we were driving through Texas, middle of nowhere, Texas, described by its residents as the armpit of Texas.
Lovely.
It's not mine. And we're driving along, and I have taken control of the wheel for just a couple minutes. Katie had to go in the back for a minute. And I decided, okay, we're going to turn around and get back on the main highway. And I see I can turn around here. There's some open space. So, and it's kind of sandy, but I'm like, okay, we're driving, and I'm singing the Indiana Jones theme song, and I'm like, dun 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 dun. And then as it's going, I can feel the RV sinking and getting stuck, and I'm like, dun 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 dun. And the car won't move. The RV's totally stuck. We're in the middle of nowhere. We're Googling on our phones how to unstick your car from sand. And then finally it says your best bet is to dig. We're okay, we don't have shovels, but we do have one tiny pink dustpan, and then we have a bunch of little blue plastic bowls. And so all of us jump outside the RV, and we're trying to dig the RV out of the sand, and then we're trying to push it out as someone's driving. This is not working. We try putting giant Post-it pads under the wheels to get out. This isn't happening. Oh, and then finally this big red pickup truck pulls in, and the sand is billowing out behind it, and this guy gets out of the car and he goes have no fear, Mike is here. And it's just completely absurd, and they have to go and get a tow chain, and in that time we're feeding them pecan pie that's and anyway, eventually they tow our car out. Katie gets a flower, and then we drive on our way to Albuquerque, covered in dust. And those are the moments that's now the story that I think of when I think of the summer. And at the time, it seemed like a disaster, but we spent the whole time laughing and taking pictures and bonding as a team. And now that's one of my favorite moments of the summer.
I mean, there's no other way to have an experience like that. That's just never going to happen in an office.
True. It's very true. Very true. God, there was one time I was driving the rig. Tin Lizzie is her name, by the way. I was driving Tin Lizzie, and totally popped a tire. It was the worst. We had to pull over. I was freaking out. I thought we were all going to just like spontaneously perish. We all got out of the got out of the rig and just like we had pink duct tape. It worked. It was amazing. We put it right over the hole and like we're able to survive that. That was a moment I'll never forget.
Long enough to get to the tire place.
Long enough, just long enough to get to the tire place. There was another time we had it was so hot over the summer. We would get these ginormous jugs of water. We would just buy them in bulk, and we would usually leave them on this little doorstep that you take. Imagine that we had a doorstep that you take to get into the RV, so that it wouldn't rock around while we were driving. We call this process batting down the hatches. So before we start really driving, we're like, okay, everyone bat down the hatches, and everyone runs around the rig making sure like cupboards are closed. Things. If we have a water bottle out, that could fly out and hit someone. Like, let's put that in a drawer. Like things like that. And we'd completely forgotten about these jugs of water. And before we know it, we hit the road and we just hear this ginormous, it sounds like a gunshot. We're like, oh my God, what has just happened? And we realize that there's water. The whole thing has hit a wall and cracked. And there's water all over the floor. And Rachel shouts, it's the Great Flood! And we're just, she was so great in the RV. She was so organized. She would clean it obsessively. It was amazing. God love Rachel. But of course, she was the one that was like, oh my God, there's water everywhere. We're like picking up stuff off the ground. We stopped the RV in this very awkward location just to like start sopping up water that was all over the floor. And it's just like, never forget. I think that happened twice. I think we had a couple floods.
1 gallon of water goes a really long way when
it's
your
amazing.
Floor is 20 feet by 10 feet.
It's amazing.
We had the Great Flood, and then at some point there had to have been an aha moment, hopefully not during the flood, where you guys were like, okay, we can't let this summer end. When did you guys know that you were going to continue on with GDD?
Yeah, so we as the road trip started to take a close around our last couple of weeks, we started talking about, hey, what's going to happen next? And it had always been a really tough conversation.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, it was always a little bit emotional too, for the whole team, and just, hey, this thing is going to come to a close, and what are ways that we can enable this impact to grow and live on past the RV in a way that feels really rewarding and meaningful, but not like we did this road trip and it ended, and it felt so wrong. And I think so we were actively searching for ways to enable it to continue, and the solution wasn't completely clear until at least a couple months after we got back. By that point, I was back at Stanford to finish up my senior year.
You were the Lone Ranger.
I know, I was the lone ranger, and Jenna, Rachel, and Natalia had all taken amazing full-time positions in the real world, and so I had lost them. But as I was finishing up my senior year, there was an opportunity to work on a capstone project before I graduated in product design, and so I started thinking of maybe I'll start a new project related to the design and education and women's empowerment sphere, because I really liked that intersection before, but what are other ways to work in this field? And then I just had to take a step back and ask myself, like, why am I trying to start a new project when really the only thing I want to be working on, and that needs to be worked on, for all of our sakes, I think, was this project. And so I started working on it, and was lucky enough to have Jenna, Natalia, and Rachel kind of supporting me along the way remotely. There were a couple workshops that were coached along the way, but mostly it was finding ways for this to live on in a new form. And so we started talking about ways to share this workshop with even more educators, so that they could bring our workshop to communities of their own and become coaches. So we were bouncing around a lot of ideas, and it has now eventually turned into an online. What? It's alive. It's here. Yes, it's amazing. So we have this online course. It takes about an hour to go through, and it includes a bunch of videos from the summer when we actually had our workshop in action, and some photos from of what each activity of the workshop looks like in real life, and some text that are really just, helpful tips that we've learned along the way for really making each activity work and just transitioning between them and things like that. And then from the online course, we also have this physical teaching toolkit. It's kind of like this all-inclusive package that comes in the mail. It includes all of our teaching materials, plus
It looks so good.
we're so excited about this. We have a couple pieces of it here today. One of the newest parts is this notebook. It's a facilitator guide. It's really cute and blue, and it takes you through the workshop step by step. So you can hold it as you teach, kind of like cue cards, and it has kind of the timestamps, how to run each activity, how to transition, things like that. So we're excited about this. I'm excited.
I'm excited.
That was actually, I've made myself like an honorary member. That was actually my favorite part when I was looking up, what are the kids going to look like? Because you guys have just some verbal cues for people. Because when you're hosting something for the first time and you forget, now the whole chemistry's off and you're standing there awkward. So I think the thoughtfulness that you guys placed in, everything's color coordinated. So when you go to host your workshop, you can rock it and you can make that same impact.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of this is wanting to extend our impact, not just to reach more girls, but also to be able to share some piece of this experience that we were so fortunate to have and that was so formative for us, and to be able to give a little piece of that to facilitators who want to bring this to their own community and be able to actually get some of that feeling of connecting with the girls and feeling more confident in themselves and feeling like a leader themselves. Some of the people who will be running this will be teachers who do that every day. And some people will be Girl Scout troop leaders who are used to doing that. And some of the people we've seen step up with interest are just people who really care about making an impact in their community, but really need the tools and confidence to be able to do that. And so I'm excited about this as an opportunity. And Katie's worked really hard on perfecting this notebook guide. And I think that will be really a piece that helps empower them day of to not feel the stress of needing to remember everything and be able to just kind of work from that and, enjoy some of that special experience we got.
Yeah.
So if you guys could each give one piece of advice to a new coach hosting their first workshop, what would you tell them?
I think it kind of goes back to one of the points that we brought up earlier about the cool card. But I think honestly, as a facilitator, it was something that I found myself learning again and again, along the way, was just how important it was to just connect with a side of yourself that can be really goofy and fun and just totally yourself around the girls, so that they feel then comfortable being themselves too. And sometimes it takes, walking into a workshop and not giving directions and being a teacher, but just connecting with them as friends and as mentors and kind of older sisters, and kind of navigating those different relationships and dynamics too along the way, I think can be really helpful. So I guess one piece of advice is just, have fun with it and make it you as a facilitator. Because this workshop is something that, we have some quotes in here, things that you can literally say if you want to during the workshop, and we hope that those are helpful. But at the end of the day, this should feel like a workshop that comes from you, because we're, Jenna's in Seattle, I'm in the Bay Area, we're not getting back in the RV shed tier, but, when we were in the RV, we weren't able to continue a lot of the relationships we built with girls in the first place. And now, because these educators are, permanently ingrained in communities with girls that they can be coaching this workshop with, they have an opportunity that we didn't. And so I think that opens up a new space for our workshop to be impactful, and makes it even more important that educators take this workshop and really make it their own, because at the end of the day, it's their relationship that they're uniquely building with the girls.
Yeah, that's a great.
I love that.
And I would say don't worry too much about saying the right thing, because this workshop isn't actually in the end that much about you saying anything to these girls. The best connecting moments I shared with these middle schoolers across the country was just pay attention to them when they're talking. Yeah. I can't tell you how much of a difference that makes. Like 10 to 13-year-old girls aren't actually that used to being listened to and taken seriously. especially when it comes to talking about world problems and issues in their community. You know, they're often used to being brushed off and patted on the head, and they're being talked at all day. They're in school all the time. People are telling them how to think and what to do often, and having time to just say, yeah, like, what do you think about this? Why does this matter to you? How do you feel about this? And you can kind of see the energy grow as, you know, they're talking and they're listening to one another, and they can tell that you're really paying attention and care about what they're saying. Those were the moments that actually I could see girls growing in confidence. And so yeah, my piece of advice would be, don't worry too much about saying the right thing. Focus more on just paying attention and giving them your full presence.
So in addition to being workshop advice, it's pretty good life advice. Last question. Last question for you guys before I let you go, because I could talk to you guys about this experience forever. I love GDD. When you look back on this, is there any story or experience that you haven't gotten to share? Because you guys have gone to conferences. I'm sure you shared a ton at Stanford and with your new colleagues. Is there one thing that stands out that just hasn't come up?
I think the stories that we haven't told yet are ones that are the most deeply personal to our team in the ways that we watch each other grow and ourselves learn. And I think the reason why we haven't really told them is because we're still figuring out what they are. You know, I still feel like, you know, we're learning ways that we've been transformed by this experience. It really was something that changed us for the better. You know, we didn't come back, you know, to preface it, we didn't come back like scarred and so. I mean, I think it was it was a beautiful but also very, very challenging, emotional and social experience. I mean, I'm the kind of person that hates to cry. I detest crying. It doesn't matter if anybody else is crying, but I hate to personally cry because growing up, for me, that was always a sign of weakness. And it was okay if other people cried, but if I cried, I was weak. And
well, at least you were better than I was. If someone cried, I just became awkward and I didn't know what to do. And I was like, you should just stop doing that now.
Like, why is there water coming from your eyelids? No, and I think over the summer, I learned how to cry and be okay with the fact that, like, emotions move through you, and the point is not to ignore them just to be strong. You know, it's to understand the ways that they're impacting you and embrace it, and to know that the moments in which we're at our highest and lowest are exactly the ones in which we're learning the most. You know, if we are just stable, you know, just emotionally, we are stable the entire time. I mean, we're just a constant.
Life would be pretty boring.
It would be pretty boring. And I think our road trip was far from boring.
That's true.
Because there were so many amazing highs of the trip, but there were also, you know, and when I say low, I don't mean like, oh my God, I'm gonna quit, like this sucks. It was just more of like, whoa, like I'm feeling a lot of emotions and I'm asking a lot of questions about like who I am and what I want and what it means to be a leader and what it means to create change. And I think you just learn to figure out, as much as we're out there asking girls questions about, you know, the things that they care about and who they want to become, we're back in the RV having the same conversation. And it took a tremendous, I don't know, it tugs at the heartstrings. It does. It was a trip that tugged at the heartstrings in more ways than one. You realize what matters most to you, and the people you love, and the places you love, and the types of communities that make you feel at home. And because you are in an RV creating a home from scratch, and you're meeting tons of people along the way that challenge you in different ways. And I think, I could go on and on. I think it just, I don't know.
I thought of one more thing that we actually never talk about.
We never talk about.
We never talk about the YouTube.
Oh my God.
Okay, well, and we don't talk about it because it's awkward, but I'll totally talk about it now. So we were trying to figure out, you know, as we're going, what's on our mind this whole time is like, okay, how do we keep connected with the girls? How do we stay in their lives? And we'd started this thing called Journal with GDD where,
I
the
follow
girls
that.
can, oh, good. And, we send out our prompts a couple times a week and the girls would text us back. And we thought, okay, that's one side of it. But really, the thing that the girls are on is YouTube. Like, we got to get a YouTube. And Katie's a great video editor. And so we thought, okay, we're going to try to fill a week, like, responding to these questions ourselves. And it's one of these things, we've very much been taught to prototype. So we're like, okay, we're going to prototype. We're going to do one right now. And we filmed some of these, like we filmed one near Mount Rushmore. We're all like sitting outside awkwardly talking about our notebooks. And then we decided, like, okay, what if we try filming them while we're in the RV? So like Katie will like set up her GoPro on the dashboard and we'll be talking about like answering these questions about like, who's the person in the world who knows you the best? And we're like trying to answer this while we're like crossing the George Washington Bridge in New York. There's another one, the really awkward one that's still on the internet somewhere is us talking about our superpowers. And we're like in this high school and we're trying to like act out and be silly because we just are weird. There's so many weird outtakes from this of like Natalia and I pretending to teleport, us like making people who are walking around in the high school like come be in our video. And it's something that we prototyped, like we worked hard on it and it didn't really work.
Totally didn't work. Like, no one really watched our YouTube. We were like, girls love YouTube. This will be great. Like, Vine used to be really popular. YouTube has always been really popular.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this will be the biggest hit ever. And it just totally wasn't. It was like, we always felt awkward about it.
We found that we were avoiding doing it. That's what it was. It's like,
we were like,
we
gotta film
excuse not to
another
do it.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, they're expecting an episode. Like, no one was expecting an episode. Okay. But we had this in our heads that, like, that it was so important that we did it. And we finally got to a point where we're like, we got to sit down and talk about the YouTube. Because are we going to keep doing this thing?
Did I tell you that somebody recently told me, I was talking to them about this problem of like, we want to continue what we're doing, but we don't know how. And they told me, you know what you have to do?
Oh, no.
You have to make a YouTube channel. Oh my God. I was like,
Round two.
Yeah, so that was like, I realized that was such a thread that had started early on of knowing we needed to find a way to share this with people we couldn't be with in person. And we had some weird failed tries that we learned a lot from. And the YouTube is just a quiet thing we don't talk about.
So
but
true.
there's there somewhere if you want to watch Natalia and I pretend to teleport into high school.
What I love about these two stories is that they really do reflect that, and it's not just for women or people who are our age, the experience that you guys created for the girls, we're all going through that. Maybe you're now a senior vice president at Apple and you're still thinking, oh my God, I used to just be a director. I don't know if I can do this. So it applies to every aspect of life, and I can't wait to follow this summer, the rest of the year, and see all of these different communities respond. Before we go, what's the best way for A, people to stay up to date with you, and then B, if an educator, community leader, or just a person is sitting like, oh my God, I've got to do this, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, email us at hello@girlsdrivingfordifference.com. We respond very well to email. It will probably be at the very least that day. And our website has a lot of really great, helpful information on how to become a coach. There's a 2-minute little, we call it an application, but it's not really that. It's more of, hi, what's your name? What's your email? Where are you from? And why do you want to coach? And then we'll be in touch we've been scheduling these calls to get to know community leaders better and then registering them for the online course. And we just delivered our very first teaching toolkit yesterday, which is super exciting. We have a Bay Area mother and teacher and educator who is so excited to be coaching this workshop, and we can't wait to see how it goes. But that was a big milestone for us, and we want to get as many toolkits out there as we can. So
yeah, and she's also coaching it along with her young daughter, who is also trying to learn to coach it for her middle school. So that's another opportunity. Like, we talk about educators and we talk about community leaders, but if there's like a group of high school age women or college age women who wants to give this a shot,
it's good for your resume. No. We're kidding. No, I think it's a great learning experience. I think being able to teach, and I mean we're so like they're colorful, they're fun, they're really not intimidating. Like sign up, be a coach. I think it's gonna be great.
I love it. I can't thank you guys enough for sharing so many parts of the journey with us, both your time with the girls and also the things that you went through, because as challenging as it was for them to open up, it's also probably more challenging to open up to yourself about all of those things. So I can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you so much, Jenna. It was so great to talk with you again.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna.